Mr. Walter, you may begin when you are ready.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the honor of testifying. I'm president of the Capital Research Center, where we've long studied the nonprofit world and its political connections. It's refreshing to have a hearing where all witnesses share strong agreement on a central point, namely, foreign money should be kept out of American politics. Mr. Weissman urges passage of the Disclose Act, in part because it drastically limits foreign political spending. Ms. Sutherland deplores political spending by Swiss foreign national billionaire Hans-Jörg Wyss. Mr. Sohn objects to past funding from Middle Eastern countries to the Council on American-Islamic Relations, and I criticize domestic environmentalist groups' ties to the Chinese Communist government. A lot of these problems involve America's nonprofit sector, which is traditionally a glory and a strength of this exceptional country. But foreigners abuse this sector, especially tools like fiscal sponsorship and donor-advised funds, which aren't inherently bad things, in order to hide their influence ops. Americans' homegrown groups also exploit those tools. Recall the politicized multi-billion-dollar nonprofit network operated by Arabella Advisors, one of whose presidents admitted their business model, which heavily uses fiscal sponsorships, is, quote, a workaround to the tax regime. This same Arabella network's first major funder, whom we can discern, was Hans-Jörg Wyss, the Swiss foreign national and Democratic megadonor Ms. Sutherland discusses. A big part of the problem is so-called campaign finance reform. It greatly narrows money flows into hard dollar entities like political candidates and parties, but it places no restraints on 501c3, private foundations, and public charities. This preference for the charitable sector is explained by the fact that 8 billionaires, all with the same last name, Foundation, gave almost all the money to pass the last campaign finance law, McCain-Feingold. That law hurts both political parties and drives anyone seeking to influence our politics to send money not to parties and candidates where it would be disclosed, but into nonprofits where the money is hidden, sometimes under multiple layers, and also where the money is unlimited, both in dollar amounts and also in its source. Foreign governments and foreign nationals like Hans Wyss can give unlimited amounts. As one left-wing activist admits, the law that forbids using C3 charities for electoral work is a joke. Quote, philanthropy can help win elections, pass legislation, enact policy, decide court cases, shape press coverage, catalyze protests, smear your enemies, boost your allies, and even help set the overall cultural direction of American life. New York Times reporter Teddy Schleifer agrees, confessing 501c3 charities, quote, are often surprisingly as much a part of big money politics as your neighborhood super PAC. Some left-wing practitioners celebrate the collapse of the traditional separation between charity and politics, including Eric Kessler, who founded the Arabella network of left-wing nonprofits. In a case study of the business he paid for, we read that when Arabella was founded in 2005, most donors still equated philanthropy with giving to charity for community purposes. But he and his business partner, quote, saw things differently. They were obsessed with bold change-making strategies, advocacy, and innovative methods, like fiscal sponsorship, that would, quote, soon help billions in new philanthropic resources from left-wing billionaires, foreign and domestic, flow into the nonprofit field with unprecedented velocity. It's undesirable when Americans produce this pseudo-philanthropy and manipulate our politics through it. It's far worse when foreign donors are involved because nearly all Americans reject foreign money entering our politics through any channel, much less through alleged charities. That's why states keep passing laws to block federal funds, foreign funds. Only this past week, Alabama and Michigan saw houses of their state legislatures pass bills to prohibit foreign nationals from contributing to ballot measure committees. On the federal level, this committee should consider whether 501c3 charities should continue to be allowed to engage in ballot initiative campaigns, given that charities have no limit on their spending and may receive unlimited foreign funding. The committee should also consider whether charities should be allowed to engage in voter registration, given the documented abuses by charities who flout laws and regulations that only permit this when it's done in a nonpartisan manner. Charities that hire Democratic micro-targeting firms to help register voters are laughing at your tax code. Thank God Americans give generously to nonprofits They give because they want nonprofits to help people. They don't want anyone, especially foreigners, to use politicized nonprofits to manipulate people. Thank you for taking this grave problem seriously.
Session. Thank you. There are serious concerns over the link between radical 501c3 organizations that actively cause violence and unrest across the country and the Chinese Communist Party. Most notably being the over $20 million that the People's Forum received from Mr. Neville Roy Singham. The CCP is taking advantage of our tax-exempt sector to poison our dialogue and cause division in our political system. That should alarm every single person, whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat. If you are an American, you should be extremely concerned with what's going on at the expense of our tax-exempt status. Mr. Walter, the CCP's involvement in our tax-exempt sector is one of many ways that China has sought to harm America's national interest. Can you please walk through Mr. Singham's web, the big web of nonprofits, and explain how the CCP is using our tax-exempt sector to push CCP propaganda?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I have to say that some of this is speculative because so little is known for certain, and like a good Maoist, Mr. Singham works hard to hide what he's doing, and our nonprofit sector makes that easy. But there's been some very good reporting, especially from the New York Times on this, which uses the number hundreds of millions of dollars Mr. Singham has spent to try to influence politics in America and other countries as well, through a vast number of groups. All those groups do different things, but one thing they do is exactly what you say. They all push communist China propaganda. As the New York Times is perfectly clear, none of them are registered under FARA, as the Times also points out. They do all kinds of things like the People's Forum, as you said. It both trains and organizes for protests on multiple issues all over America. Other groups operate YouTube channels to reach youth. Others operate fake news websites. Still more, lobby Congress, operate the Tricontinental Institute, a Marxist think tank, support candidates for office in multiple countries. And in all cases, by the way, they don't just boost the communist government of China. They also support other hostile regimes. For instance, the No Dut Doll group, connected to Singham, propagandizes for the gruesome dictatorship of North Korea. Singham's wife, Jody Evans, helps operate Code Pink, and of course their protests famously include disrupting hearings in Congress, which shows their contempt for America and their contempt for the rule of law. So I think this is clearly something that needs additional investigation from multiple parts of the executive branch, and I applaud your investigating it here.
So I want to ask each witness before us, yes or no, will you submit your donor list for the record?
Yes, I will say we receive no foreign funding. No, I will not violate the constitutional rights involved.
Okay, yes or no is fine. So starting from my left, going the other way, can you certify under oath that your organizations have never received funds from a foreign national or foreign corporations?
Yes.
Mr. Walter, how would you redesign the 990 form, and do we need to have more of it's not just who you transferred money to, but so we need the chain of lineage? What would you do?
Well, thank you for the question, Congressman. Certainly, additional transparency would be very valuable. EIN numbers are not always used on 990s when one nonprofit's giving to another. That's certainly an important way to help track. You could expand the disclosures for the highest paid employees, for the highest paid contractors. The fiscal sponsorships could be required to be listed, possibly with a basic budget for them, or the name of the individual who's the principal officer of the fiscally sponsored project, when the project begins and ends, and then whether the project applied for its own exempt status independently, and obviously the simple thing of do you accept foreign money? That's the single most obvious.
Any concerns on your part between the leakage between a C3, C4, offsetting expenditures in that, just that simple world there?
Well, some of that is already supposed to be disclosed,
It's supposed to be, but it's really hard to track.
yes, and you're right. There are cost-sharing agreements there that are very problematic. In that case, it's probably the law that needs to be changed. I wouldn't think it's a bad thing. I mean, conceivably, just say C3s are not going to be allowed to give to C4s. That alone would be a significant thing. The big left-wing foundations would be very angry, but.
Mr. Chairman, there may be an actual solution that could come out of this hearing that's actually not Republican or Democrat, but just good tax policy. Let's clean up, modernize the 990 form so we actually know what's going on out there. And with that, I yield back.
The whole purpose of the hearing is to find solutions to solve the problem.
This concern about China should be something that gets everyone's attention. So let me ask the follow-up question. Should we therefore militarize our election process? We'll start with you, Mr. Walter.
I certainly don't think it should be militarized, and
Okay.
I'm very
Ms.
sorry
Sutherland?
that your party has been willing to try that in recent years.
Mr. Walter, you have done a great job highlighting the concerns with foreign entities such as those tied to the CCP, funding U.S. tax-exempt nonprofits to support climate litigation and other lawfare against American energy companies. Unfortunately, nonprofits are not the only entity steering outside money into the U.S. legal system. Foreign-linked funds are investing in lawsuits against U.S. businesses across almost every sector of the economy for profit. I assume, based on your testimony today, that you believe we shouldn't allow the abuse of our tax code by organizations that characterize themselves as not-for-profit when they are more akin to agents of foreign governments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would it be fair to assume that you would also be concerned about foreign-backed, for-profit entities abusing our tax code in the pursuit of financing litigation?
Yes, foreign financing of litigation is a real problem.
Well, I'm glad we also agree on that. One reason this foreign capital is flooding into our courts is that these litigation financiers are adopting aggressive tax positions. They claim their deals are subject to capital gains rather than ordinary income tax rates. This allows some foreign funders to evade the U.S. tax code entirely.
I do want to recognize Chairman Jason Smith, who has really led on this important issue. Since 2023, this committee has worked to not only understand, but also address the improper influence and abuse within the United States tax-exempt sector. I don't think there's any doubt, and we've heard it from all of you, that right now that there are actors who are adversarial to the United States, who are exploiting weaknesses in our tax system to move money, to support causes that are nefarious, and even finance terrorism. And Mr. Walter, that's the one thing I want to talk to you on that last point, is financing terrorism. Can you talk about, through your experience, and especially maybe since October the 7th of 2023, the attack on Israel by Hamas, what pattern or what trends you're seeing in terrorist groups and foreign actors and how they exploit the U.S. tax-exempt system?
Thank you for the question. Probably the best thing would be possibly to enter into the record our report, Marching Towards Violence. And the highlight of that report is that we identified approximately 150 groups that were endorsing or supporting Hamas's terrorism in a variety of ways, and often, of course, encouraging domestic terrorism, as we've seen in this state, in this very capital at Union Station, when there was a riot, for instance. But the large majority of the groups that we identified did have connections to the American nonprofit sector. Many of them were precisely handled through fiscal sponsorships by places like Westpac. So this is a sprawling problem that deserves serious investigation given the gravity of the crimes that are involved.
Thank you. And on that note, I've introduced a bill, the bill number's H.R. 6800. The bill would authorize the Treasury Department to revoke the tax-exempt status of any organization deemed to have provided material support or resources to a designated terrorist group. I do want to note that we proposed this bill in the last Congress after the October 7th, 2023 attack. And I do want to also note that it's got a strong legislative record because it was reported out of this committee with bipartisan support, and it's actually passed the House floor twice. To me, that reflects the broad recognition not only of the threat, but also the importance of protecting Americans from this foreign influence. Can I ask you your opinion, if you've had a chance to look at this bill, H.R. 6800, and whether it would be effective in preventing these groups from channeling funds to terrorist groups?
I think it's fair to say that it certainly would improve the current situation, and it's a sad fact that the attacks happened at this point almost 2 years ago, and yet we still have not done much in response.
Thank you. Let me ask you, are there any additional measures right now that you think Congress could consider to combat this type of abuse?
Well, I think a lot of the reforms that were already mentioned here, additional disclosure of foreign funding, additional disclosure of fiscal sponsorships, those are certainly part of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The lack of transparency surrounding these nonprofits, specifically 501c4s, and their foreign nationals' ability to indirectly influence elections is disconcerting, to say the least. Mr. Walter, just a yes or no question. Are FEC-regulated PACs and super PACs required to disclose their direct donations and the donors?
Yes.
Mr. Walter, what about donor-advised funds make them attractive to influence campaigns, insulation, anonymity, plausibility, deniability? What would you say?
Well, of course, all of those things. I mean, again, donor-advised funds were created to help encourage good charity in America, but they are easily abused by bad actors.
So this is like a structural vulnerability in our charitable system. Would you agree with that?
It is, yes.
Mr. Walter, I'd like to talk briefly about the fiscal sponsorship structures, which I think you mentioned in your testimony. And there was a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed by Tao Fortgang of the Manhattan Institute that I think explained very well how the structure works and how it's in some cases allowed bad actors to raise money through tax-deductible donations. And I think I want to say, and I'll see if you agree, they are often used for legitimate purposes to help new nonprofits sort of get off the ground, if you will. But it also can allow a non-exempt entity to maintain limited public disclosure, which is really what I'm working to get at with the bill I'm working on. So do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, Congressman.
Yeah, based on your research, is there an example for those listening that you could point to that would exemplify that gap in transparency?
Well, one of the most egregious examples of the abuse here would be a fiscal sponsor that was helping Samadoun, which is tied to terrorism. I believe it was the Biden administration as Treasury Department that designated them in that way.
Thank you. Are nonprofits currently required to disclose fiscal sponsorship activity on their annual tax returns?
I think I would call it best practices. So it sometimes happens, but it is not required by anything.
Yeah, my understanding is it's not required, but as you said, they can choose. Folks can obviously choose to do that. So as we're considering reforms to the Form 990, the tax form, what basic information would you suggest would help the public better understand how tax-deductible donations flow through these arrangements? Do you have any ideas?
Certainly. The one simple thing would be requiring that sponsored projects be named on the 990. Perhaps the basic budget of revenues, expenses, assets. You certainly could also designate a person as the principal officer for the fiscally sponsored project. The dates of when the sponsorship began, when it ended, yes or no to whether it received foreign funding, and yes or no to whether the fiscally sponsored project applied for its own independent tax-exempt status.
Yeah, all great suggestions. It's all about the transparency so that anyone reading that could understand the arrangement where those dollars are going.
The dark money ecosystem highlights a disturbing trend where nonprofits essentially lend out to their tax-exempt organizations. Can you explain to me a little bit about what we can do to solve this issue with Westpac? I only have a minute left, but you have been a leader on this with your organization. Tell us how we can do this legally, legislatively to correct this. And I think you mentioned a few ideas, but I'd like to hear them.
Well, as I said, the Westpac operates by fiscal sponsorships, and the groups that you're complaining about rightly are fiscally sponsored projects. So at a bare minimum, more transparency about fiscal sponsorship would be valuable, and it's not currently in the law. I will say that the more you and this committee do to expose what's going on here, shame sometimes works. At least one of the worst groups at Westpac, I believe, has left them as a fiscal sponsor now. They just found another fiscal sponsor, but shame did something.
Yeah, and also, obviously, you've been pivotal in exposing the whole Zuckerbucks phenomenon that we talked about in the past with election integrity. You've testified that and extensively on our End Zuckerbucks Act, which seeks to restore election integrity by banning the private takeover of public democratic process. Would you think this same type of 990 disclosure you just discussed with the Samadoun would actually help with businesses or operations like Westpac?
It would certainly make be some help, yes.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Ms. Fishbach from the great state of Minnesota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Walter, we're not going to leave that topic because I appreciate that Ms. Tenney brought it up. And I was just kind of, and first I would just ask, was there anything you didn't get to say that you wanted to respond to Ms. Tenney with? Because, you know, we are challenged by the clock sometimes, so I just wanted to make sure.
I appreciate that, but no thank you.
Okay, all right. And, well, I was kind of, as she was talking, I was thinking of the, who's ultimately responsible? I mean, as this lending thing is going on, if they're engaging in prohibited political activity, or they are receiving some kind of illegal funds, who ultimately is responsible, or is it just kind of glossed over?
Well, I believe in law, all the parties would be, you know, both the sponsor and the sponsorees are all going to share the legal responsibility for what's going on. I'm confident that lots of the sponsors would try to pretend, oh, what do we know, and the rest. And in fact, they may not have known very clearly, but there's a lot, I think, of winks and nods going on, like, oh, I don't know what you guys may be doing at the college campus next week.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And do you feel like it is, I mean, you didn't speak about any specific cases, but do you feel like that the prevalence is just wink and nod? Oh, we don't know what you're doing. I mean, there's nothing to prosecute. There's none of the transparency is there, so we really can't get at it. Would that be a correct statement?
Well, the part of the trouble is that if you were trying to do something criminally, you would have to prove all the things required under the criminal law for conspiracy. And one of the things is actually knowing clearly what's going to happen. And obviously, I suspect some of the bad actors are very careful not to know what's going to happen.
So being able to just eliminate that kind of relationship would be far more effective than...
Well, certainly exposing it. Now, again, in the case of groups that we know, if a group is constantly organizing demonstrations that get wildly out of hand and become illegal, I think it would be reasonable for there to be serious investigations to see who knew what when.
Thank you very much. And I would like to just shift just a little bit on the 990s. I know there's been a lot of discussion about them, so if there's someone who wants to jump in. But my concern was the nonprofits, obviously the 990s do not do what they need to be doing, but they don't require organizations who are involved in immigrant resettlement to report the number of individuals they assist, particularly when those activities occur through fiscal sponsorship. And so I'm wondering, would that be a legitimate kind of, I think it would be very transparent and very helpful to have that on the 990. So is anybody, providing that oversight, or I know that there's been some discussion. I'm kind of throwing it out there. There's not a specific question, but I'm kind of throwing it out there if anyone else has any thoughts on it.
Well, I would just say quickly that the 990 calls for you to give your program accomplishments, requesting more specificity in terms of the numbers of persons served would be reasonable. That certainly appears on many 990s because people want to brag about their numbers.
Mr. Walter, your organization, Capital Research Center, has documented the, was it Arabella Advisors network role in channeling large sums of money, I'm talking large sums of money, into ballot initiatives on election-related advocacy. So, using Ohio Issue 1 as an example, can you explain how groups like the 1630 Fund operated within the network and the extent to which foreign-sourced wealth, such as funding linked to the Swiss billionaire that I just mentioned, can lawfully influence elections in states like Ohio and elsewhere?
Sure. The 1630 Fund operates dozens upon dozens of fiscal sponsorships, and it also directly engages in all kinds of electoral issues, including ballot initiatives. And we should add, of course, ballot initiatives are now seen as one of the best ways to drive your voters to the poll for everything else you want, including getting people elected. And yet our current law allows C3s to do that, and it also allows foreigners like Mr. Weiss to give money to the 1630 Fund. I would add one quick thing to what Caitlin just said, and that is the top Democrat election lawyer, Mark Elias, sued your state of Ohio after you passed a ban on foreign money in these ballot initiatives, which I can only call that shameful.
So, led by the 1630 Fund, it appears that only a few key, I mean, they really essentially only had a few key far extremist, if you will, very exotic type funders that invest the lion's share into these ballot initiatives. In your opinion, was that the case? And what is the, well, you know what, I only have 10 seconds. Listen, I'm going to submit a lot of my questions to both of you, and for the record, and I will do that. And with that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll just get right into it. Mr. Walter, maybe you can help clarify this for us then, and help us with what my colleague was asking. So, from what I've heard so far, America's enemies can funnel as much cash into the nonprofit sector as they want. So let's go through this hypothetical scenario, and let's just see if I'm right or I'm wrong, and please tell me so. Theoretically, is it possible for Xi Jinping himself to entirely fund an American 501c3, I'm not done yet, by donating it through a donor-advised fund without the public ever seeing his name on that C3's Form 990?
Absolutely.
Just again, so it is possible that Xi Jinping himself could do something like that?
There's no legal barrier whatsoever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walter. I appreciate it.